Borderlands 4 is a great game with a lot of potential, but like every single Borderlands game that came before it, it has a plethora of problems. This is everything wrong with Borderlands 4. First, launching the game weeks ahead of its original release date did it no favors. That extra time would have greatly benefited the developers to polish and smash bugs. Instead, they hyped up the early release and then they dropped the game with a ton of bugs and performance issues. Marketing and hype was another big issue for Borderlands 4. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed seeing Borderlands 4 commercials on TV during prime time and it was wild and exciting, but there were some weird choices too. Investing likely $500,000 to show Borderlands 4 on the ball in Las Vegas for one day, that's kind of weird. And then there's the Borderlands movie and the tweets by Randy Pitchford, the CEO. Both increased a negative perception of the franchise. Fair or not, the Borderlands movie flopping did irreparable harm to the franchise. I've only been in one movie ever in my life and it's a flop, so me and Sydney Sweeney have one thing in common. Ultimately, Borderlands 4 didn't feel the same level of hype as Borderlands 3 at launch. I can't quite put my finger on all the reasons why that is though. Another huge problem is the music of Borderlands 4. Gone is the amazing work of Rayson Varner and Jesper Kidd, and it's been replaced instead with a mixture of songs by Joshua Caro and Finishing Move. And Finishing Move did a great job on Borderlands 3 with the Revenge of the Cartels content. So on paper, this should work really well. You got an accomplished composer and then this awesome group that did really good music previously, but there's a huge lack of music just happening in the game. In previous games, there would be a constant theme per area that would play and give an ambiance that defined the style and the feel of the Borderlands games. It's sort of like a space western with hints of sci-fi and fantasy. Now we get the same generic fight music and themes throughout, and it just feels hollow. Probably the biggest problem with Borderlands 4 at launch is the lack of endgame. Sure, we have the ultimate level climb, but that's basically just replaying the same story missions where you can't skip dialogue and they add on terribly annoying modifiers. Borderlands 1 launched with no real endgame, but at least it had bonus playthrough that you could do on harder difficulty. Borderlands 2 launched with 2 raid bosses, neither of which you could defeat legitimately on normal mode, forcing you to replay the story again and really refine your build to defeat them. Also, one of those two, Vermivorous, required you to play in a multiplayer session to even have a chance to see them spawn. Borderlands the pre-sequel launched with Irajira and the Invincible Sentinel, the former not really being a raid boss, but the latter being one of the best raid boss fights in the franchise. Then came Borderlands 3. Now, for all the hate that it gets for the story, I really feel that one of their biggest mistakes was not including a raid boss at launch. This was constantly mentioned by the community as something that everybody seemed to want, challenging endgame, but for some reason, once again in Borderlands 4, they dropped without a raid boss at launch. How does this keep happening?
You can't keep getting away with it!
Also, there's no real reason to do the ultimate Vault Hunter levels for farming in Borderlands 4, because one of the only things to do right now in Borderlands 4 is hunt for shiny drops, aka Phosphines, which are just rare cosmetic versions of our guns, but dedicated drop farming gives the exact same loot on easy mode with no ultimate levels as what you get on Ultimate 5. And I'm talking about dedicated drops, and there's gonna be more on that here in a minute. Some people claim that you get more part variants on Ultimate 5 versus easy mode, but from my experience and from thousands of farms on different bosses, this just does not appear to actually be true. I think that the one difference that you get on ultimate levels is that there's certain firmware that you can only get on ultimate levels and not on non-ultimate levels. That's it. Now let's talk replayability. Every Borderlands game had New Game Plus or a True Vault Hunter mode, and then Borderlands 2 had an ultimate mode on top of that. Now personally, I'm not a fan of having to replay the story over and over as a requirement to get to the end game, but having it as an option feels like a must for this franchise. Wonderlands abandoned it, and now Borderlands 4 has done the same. Borderlands 3 completely nailed the concept by having True Vault Hunter mode be completely optional. So why abandon it once you've nailed the formula?
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Just like with raid bosses and takedowns, they know what fans love. Why keep destroying those things? One thing that would help massively with doing new characters and playthroughs is a dialogue skip. It's 2025 2025 and games from 20 plus years ago had dialogue skip. Why can't Gearbox figure out this simple feature? I played Diablo 4 when that came out, and all I wanted to do on that game was to play the game. I didn't care about the story at all. I skipped every cutscene, I skipped every line of dialogue, and I have zero regrets. As long as it's an option and they treat it like the cutscene skip where you have to hold down a button to skip it, I think fans would love a dialogue skip. When you beat the story, you're around level 35 or so, then you have 15 levels or more potentially that you need to grind to hit max level. The most efficient way to do this is sadly vile bounties. Why bosses and drill site completions aren't worth more XP is just weird to me. It just feels like the XP grind is once again a glaring problem in this game, which is a shame because once again they had it pretty well figured out with Wonderlands, just playing the story, and then some chaos chambers would basically get you to max level without it feeling like some crazy chore. But in that same line of thought, why are we back to enemies over leveling us? Wonderlands also nailed this formula. Have all enemies scaled to the player's level at all times, but with bosses being 2 or more levels above you to increase the difficulty on those. In Borderlands 4, there's points where if you try to go too fast through the story, the game will punish you by making enemies 5 to 10 levels higher than you. It's unfun, it's terrible balance, and honestly, it's lazy game development. This is also likely a product of forcing Borderlands 4 to be an open world game. When you have options to, go through a certain area faster than others, that's going to be an issue. Borderlands 2 was essentially the exact same type of game as Borderlands 4, an open world, but it had load screens dividing the zones. That's the only difference between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 4 in terms of the game world. Like literally every single section of Borderlands 2 was connected, you just had a load screen, and it worked perfectly well. I really feel like open world was entirely unnecessary for this game, and it led to much more problems than solutions. Another big problem that Borderlands 4 has is immune phases. We've told them so many times now, after Evil Lilith, you would think that they would say, hey, people freaking hate that kind of stuff, but no, it keeps returning. Like, I get that some bosses need to have like a phase where something happens story wise, and that's great, but after the story, get rid of that completely. Like the bio enemies, why do we have to deal with that bio bull crap again after the freaking story? Just let us go in there and shoot them, man. Like, it doesn't need to be Elden Ring over here. Now, I've gone into detail about why the Halloween event was so bad in this video, so I won't rehash it all here, but I'll sum it up with, this was the laziest content we've ever had in Borderlands ever. Whoever okayed this content should not be in charge of any future content or game development decisions. It's sad and it's embarrassing, and honestly, I still don't feel like they've even tried to apologize for it. Dedicated drops feel horrible in this game, some as low as 3% from my testing. Now, if you're not familiar, Borderlands has always had a system where certain bosses would have a specific piece of loot that only they could drop. For example, Bonehead in Borderlands 1 could drop the Bone Shredder. In Borderlands 2, Savage Lee could drop the Unkempt Herald. In the pre-sequel, Meg could drop the Torrent. In Borderlands 3, Road Dogg can drop the Hellwalker. In Wonderlands, LeChance could drop the Sword Explosion. And in Borderlands 4, Axmal can drop the Bot. But let's take a look at those drop percentages per game. Bonehead had a 100% chance to drop the Bone Shredder in Borderlands 1, but it could have all kinds of different part variants on it to improve it, including potentially a hybrid of 2 weapons. Savage Lee in Borderlands 2 originally had a 3% chance to drop the Unkempt Herald at launch, and it felt terrible, but in the Handsome Collection update, they released a patch that adjusted this to a 10% drop chance, and the fans rejoiced. They loved this change. In the pre-sequel, Meg has a 10% chance to drop the Torrent, which feels perfect. For Borderlands 3, Road Dogg had a 30% chance to drop 1 of 3 drops, basically making each drop a 10% chance. In Wonderlands, LeChance has a miserable 3.3% chance to drop the Sword Explosion until you increase your loot luck up to 48,000, which requires beating the game, unlocking the loot luck shrine, and completing 20 chaos chambers, and then you have a whopping 6% chance at the drop. This was clearly a stupid decision based on a knee-jerk reaction to world drops in Borderlands 3 being too common. Again, they just completely completely missed what everybody was complaining about. Finally, in Borderlands 4, Axe Mall seems to have a 3% chance to drop the bod. Now, I say it seems this way because data miners have not yet been able to determine the drop rates, so I did 500 runs of Axe Mall myself, and I calculated the numbers based on what happened for me. Now, it is much faster to farm most bosses in Borderlands 4 with the Moxie's big Encore machine, but a 3% drop chance just sucks no matter how you stack it. It sucked in Borderlands 2 at launch, it sucked in Wonderlands, and it sucks even more now when they should have learned from prior experience. But even worse still is some bosses have no drops at all, and some share drops with another enemy. The top offenders for that second part are Fractus sharing the Chuck with Hank from the Foundry Freaks, and also Fractus sharing the UAV with Mimicron. Fractus therefore only has one item in his loot pool that you can't get from another boss, the Protean Cell Shield. Now there's others too. The Bugbear is both Battle Wagon and Biothresher Omega's loot pools. Potato Thrower can drop from Veraxis or the Ripper Roadbirds. I'm also very much opposed to allowing almost every single item in the game to world drop. There's a few things that you can only get from its dedicated source, like the Jelly Grenade from Splash Zone or the Chomurky Grenade from Frank the Furnace and the Foundry Freaks drill site, but there's still some named enemies who respawn like Cratchman, Wreckin' Burrow, Tsunami, and Whitetail who have no drop at all, and there's still some items that have no dedicated drop location. Most notably, legendary enhancements. Now, I went over a really good solution for legendary enhancements in this video if you want to go check that out. Marcus bobbleheads, I feel like those should have been a one-time collection toward a challenge completion. Imagine the race to find them all. Doing the level 30 skip still has the map mostly fogged out. This means that one of the things you have to do on a level 30 story skip character is drive around unfogging the map. This is an extremely unfun way to play the game, and it makes me not want to do the level 30 skip at all, so therefore it's pointless. The UI and the menus are a step down from Borderlands 3, which was already a step down from Borderlands 2. Just keep it simple. You don't need to fancy up the menus this much, especially if it means that they're barely going to work. Also, map navigation on controller just sucks. No field of view slider on console launch is a huge fail. I'm glad they fixed it, but man, what the hell? There's probably a bunch more things that I'm not thinking of, so feel free to call out any other issues in the comments down below. Again, I love this game. The base game is exceptionally fun, the gameplay is great, and I like the story more than most of the other games, but Gearbox just can't seem to release a game without a bunch of issues, often completely forgetting lessons learned while making those same mistakes. Please, Gearbox, please take notes or something. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be amazing. It helps the algorithm know to show this to other Borderlands fans. Please consider subscribing for more Borderlands content. Thank you for watching. Take care.